and welcome to Sectors Up Close. I'm Elena Casas. Today we're going to be looking at the semiconductor industry, and my guest is Steve Larsen, the co-founder of PlannerDAO. Global chip makers have had a turbulent start to the year. In the lead-up to the conflict in Ukraine, their shares sank, despite there being a global shortage of the chips they make. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index, which includes heavyweights Intel and Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing, but not Samsung, lost about 13% so far this year, wiping off $500 billion of market value. One major concern is that the war in Ukraine paralysed that country's production of critical supplies of neon gas. Supplies of krypton, palladium and nickel have also been severely disrupted. According to our own calculations, 45 to 54% of the world's semiconductor-grade neon comes from two Ukrainian companies. One is based in Mariupol and the other in Odessa. They both stopped production at the start of the war, leaving major chip makers to rely on stockpiles or find other sources. Prices have climbed 500% since December. The industry is also suffering from an over-reliance on production capacity in Asia, forcing companies and governments to spend billions to build facilities in Europe and the US, with this new increased capacity still years away. Well, I'm now joined by PlannerDAO's Steve Larsen. Steve, hi. What does the impact of the loss of this raw materials supply mean for the sector?
Well, the issue is it's just creating longer lead times for these chips. So some of the lead times for the more popular semiconductors have gone up as much as 15 weeks, which is really putting a strain on the whole global supply chain right now.
Obviously, these factors are quite short-term for the moment, but what if the conflict in Ukraine were to go on for much longer? Can the industry replace this supply from elsewhere?
Well, we do know that a lot of chip makers have stockpiled what they need for the foreseeable future. We haven't been able to get really good numbers on how much that is. But if the conflict continues, then definitely it's going to create an issue. And really, at that point, we're going to have to measure it against something else that's going on which is inflation. Does inflation cut down the demand, which also then eases the burden on the supply chain? So we're going to have to see how this plays out.
So how much do you think these disruptions due to the conflict are priced into the valuations of chip makers now?
Well, considering that the whole semiconductor industry and the SOX index in particular is down on the year, I think they're pretty well priced in. These companies are still profitable. They're still making chips. There's still demand. They really have everything going for them that you want in a profitable sector and the individual companies. There's just some concern over the materials right now. So I think it's fully priced in. And I think once we have more certainty around what's going on here, as far as the conflict and alternative sources of getting these materials, then I think at that point, we're going to see a nice rebound.
What about the industry's focus on the exposure to China and, of course, its concentration of manufacturing in Asia and particularly in Taiwan?
Yeah, so right now, East Asia manufactures about 75% of the chips, and that number is only going up. And it's not so much that the production in the US and Europe is going down, it's that China is increasing at such a rapid rate. So we're going to have to really put in those investments and increase along with them if we want to remain competitive.
We are seeing a lot of that investment in the US and Europe already, of course, but how long will that take to make a difference to the shortage we see at the moment?
Well, it's going to take years because obviously these production facilities have to be built, but it's more than just the production facilities. We also have to invest in research and in engineering and in data science on the materials and all the things that go into making a faster and better chip. So, and that can take, more than years. That can take decades to get competitive. So we need to get that process started as soon as possible.
So will the billions of dollars now being spent on expanding production weigh on stocks in the shorter term?
I don't think that they will. So really, I think it's still a positive sign because as we know, stocks are looking ahead, they're forward looking. And it's, do we think the semiconductor industry is going to figure this out over the short to medium term? And I think the answer is yes. They're going to see that supply coming online down the road, no matter how far it is. And I think that's going to boost the stock prices.
So which companies are your favorites in this sector?
Well, I like NVIDIA. NVIDIA is a popular choice from everyone. I really like them because their RTX graphics card is in high demand for the gaming industry. And then also we have the professional visualization that a lot of people don't know about it. So for example, it's if you're doing construction, you can visualize the work as an architect before you get in there. And that has grown over 100% just last quarter alone. So that's one I really like.
Any others?
I'm sorry, next would be AMD. I love advanced micro devices. So they have their Ryzen CPU, which is also great for the gaming industry. And then their data centers are growing rapidly, accounting for over a quarter of their revenue right now. Data centers are going to be huge moving forward. And then lastly, I like Skyworks. SKWS is fantastic. For them, they do wireless semiconductors. It's all about the 5G. So with increased 5G demand, I think we're going to see that stock do really well here over the next couple of years.
Thanks so much for that, Steve Larsen, co-founder of PlannerDAO. Well, before I go, here are some of the top stories in this space. The government of Japan has issued an urgent call for citizens to save energy and warned of blackouts after an earthquake caused a serious power shortage. Tokyo Electric Power said a sudden cold snap and a spike in demand could result in 3 million households losing power as soon as today. Last Wednesday's magnitude 7.4 quake hit 6 thermal power plants, and the damage could take weeks or months to repair. In addition to major automakers such as Toyota, Japan is home to Renesas Electronics, which makes 1/3 of the microcontroller chips in cars globally. It said it has restarted production after stopping it at 2 factories with a partial stop at a third. It said it hopes to restore full production by Wednesday. Sources have told Reuters that Italy is prepared to fund up to 40% of Intel's total investment to build a chip packaging and assembly plant in the country worth $5 billion. The plan by Prime Minister Mario Draghi's government shows the willingness of some European member states to woo Intel to invest in the region where labour and production costs are higher than they are in Asia. Intel last week outlined details of an $88 billion investment drive across Europe, which is trying to cut its reliance on Asian chip imports. The sources said Italy's offer to pay 40% would make it competitive with Intel's investments in other regions. The facility is due to start operations between 2025 and 2027. And finally, as the saying goes, where there's muck, there's brass, and it's in your home. All your unused, redundant electronic goods. Well, most of it gets dumped in landfills or incinerated, but Britain's Royal Mint says it's found a way of reclaiming hundreds of kilograms of gold and other precious metals from old mobile phones and laptops. It plans to build a plant in Wales to process hundreds of tons of e-waste and extract hundreds of kilograms of precious metals.
So if you take all of the disused electronics around your home, that represents about 7% of the world's gold. That is a huge number and really gives us the initiative and the imperative to start recycling those electronics.
Gold and silver are highly conductive, and small quantities are embedded in circuit boards and other hardware, along with other precious metals. The Royal Mint plans to build a plant in Wales to process hundreds of tons of e-waste and extract hundreds of kilograms of the stuff to create this, a commemorative coin, which will hopefully curb the impact of e-waste on the environment. And that's your roundup of the semiconductor sector. I'm Elena Casas, and this is Reuters.